Hey cousins, welcome to Brown Liquor and Bad Ideas.
Cousins, welcome to this episode of Brown Liquor and Bad Ideas. I'm Cousin Cornell Wright, the People's Lobbyist. Today, cousins, we're going to talk about our planet Earth. And the topic is, for people talked about climate change, there's global warming, and for some reasons, cousins, they're trying to tear us apart in regards to our understanding or what's going on with this. But let's think about it, cousin. As I've said before, you can believe me or your lying eyes. Let me tell you why I think that's important. When you think about it, there are lobbyists, of which I'm attempting to be one for you, on both sides of this discussion. Why? Because there are people who are making money within the current way in which our economy and the world is producing energy and other things, how we are being transported in our cars, trains, and buses. And all these things help to contribute to what? The amount of toxins and or emissions, greenhouse gases, what they call it, going into our planet. And so you think about it, cousins, our planet has an atmosphere around it. There aren't any holes in that, so there's nowhere for this stuff to go, right? So if there's nowhere for it to go, that means it's continuing to stay here for all of us, around the world, everybody. This is an old globe that you can see. I've had it now for a long time. In fact, maybe it was my wife's, okay? And so let's look at one thing here. This is the North Pole. Notice we got the whole world in my hand, Mahalia Jackson. Check it out. But see, here's the North Pole. And so around the North Pole are a number of countries who have land mass, which has touches in the Arctic Circle, which has them have concerns and interests of what's going to be going on at the North Pole. Okay? So, as I mentioned, cousins, you're going to believe me or your lying eyes. So let's think about this. A quick chronology, and in the description, there's a lot more information about what the North Pole means to us. Okay? So let's go back in time. And it was alleged and has been in history books, and we've accepted it for a long time, that Commodore Perry and Matthew Henson, who absolutely a white cousin and a black cousin, actually discovered, or nearly discovered, the North Pole in 1908. Also, it came out that another person by the name of Dr. Frederick Cook also claims to have discovered it in 1907. I'm sorry, 1909 for Perry, 1908 for Cook. Okay? So imagine this timeline. Prior to that, cousins, nobody that we know or had been recorded had been to the North Pole. All right? Why? Because it was cold as bleep. There was snow, up to whatever you want to talk about snow being up to. No one do we know, and perhaps even with those first explorers, they went up primarily with indigenous people, who we like to refer to as Eskimos, who are a little more hardened for the environment, who actually had a chance to make it there. Okay? So we move forward, and it turns out that, somewhere about 1958, okay, think about that, Nautilus, which was a submarine that was created over here in Groton, Connecticut, a United States submarine, sailed under the North Pole. Why? Because it was all ice impacted. You follow me on that, cousins? So then let's go a little bit further in the future. In 1997, a polar bear, one of those little skiff type of things, got off of a Russian freighter because it had gone close enough to, not enough for freighter, an icebreaker, those big ships you see with the big steel in the front, so they can crack through pretty large ice cubes that are floating in the world. They then cracked through that in order to get to what? The North Pole. So we've had people trying to get there, mushing with dogs and sleds and stuff like that in 1908, 1909. Then the Nautilus comes out and gets there in 1958. In 1977, we get a ship that goes through. And then in 2017, another Russian merchant ship, check this out, a Russian merchant ship sailed over the North Pole carrying natural gas. Okay? Now, supposedly they said that by going across there, it saved almost 19 days worth of transit time. As opposed to, think about this, cousins, coming around the world and going through what? The Panama Canal. All right? I mean, I even took a flight once in which I was in Japan, and we flew over the Arctic Circle to come back to New York City. Quicker, right? Doesn't that look shorter than going around this way? You bet. It's a globe, right? Our spaceship. So you start looking at that and saying, well, look, think about the commercial aspects of being able to sail over the North Pole. All right? And so then on top of that, just to go crazier, it was just within a couple weeks ago, here in October 2020, somebody actually flew a drone over the North Pole, a Finnish guy. Okay, 2 scientists out of Finland flew a drone over the North Pole. So cousins, why do I go and try to create this timeline for you? Well, let's think about it. Then in 2019, there was a meeting of those countries that border the North Pole, the Arctic Circle, i.e. the North Pole, in order to talk about commerce and in order to talk about military aspects, in order to talk about how it's going to be divided up. By the way, our connection to this is because we have Alaska. And so if you look at it, we even have a relatively small part of this called Alaska, okay? Russia has a big chunk. Canada has a big chunk. There's Greenland, and there's Finland and Norway and those kind of countries. That's pretty much all people who have claim to having a connection, right? Okay. So our Secretary of State goes up to this meeting of the Arctic Council ministerial meeting. He's representing the United States, us cousins, talking about, hey, all those things that can happen, but at the same time, he's denying that there's climate change. Cousins, wasn't that embarrassing? I'm sorry, you're talking about the polar ice caps melting and about how over that timeline I just described to you, it's melted so much now that commercial traffic is going to be anticipated rolling across the North Pole, and then you're going to deny that there's global warming or climate change, more specifically. Global warming is what's a result of it. Climate change is all the things that are impacted because of that. They talk about if you start the melting of the polar ice caps and then melting of Greenland and ice, that's like 90% of the fresh water on the planet in those locations. Think about that, cousins, 90%. Don't we need fresh water to, I don't know, make something to drink? So aside from which, what impact does that have on everything else that we see? Let's talk about that impact. Haven't we all been experiencing and seeing reported of hurricanes? In the West, out in California, people, they're talking about forest fires raging because it's dry, all right? Cousins in the Midwest are having more difficulty with tornadoes and those kind of things. We're even having difficulties with drought seasons and heavy rain seasons on the East Coast. Cousin, these are all for reasons. And it's all associated with, and you talk about the climatologists, and they'll take you all back to, it's associated with the whole planet getting warmer because of the emission of greenhouse gases, which comes from what? Our burning of fossil fuels, oil, natural gas, coal. All right? So I'm sorry, cousins, let's just think about the math on this. If the population is growing every year, we're using more and more reasons to use electricity or need it, and we're creating it, and the gases can't go anywhere, what does that mean? So for somebody to come and tell you, well, I'm sorry, the science doesn't prove that, that's fair. But cousin, I just went through a timeline for you to look at it with your own eyes. By the way, the links for those resources are on the description. Check them out. Okay? So if this is our planet, and we have to be concerned about this, and then all of a sudden there's this thing called global warming that we have to be concerned about because it's impacting everything we do, don't you think we ought to be taking more care with that? Don't you think we ought to be more concerned about the cousins as to what's going on? Here's my last point. You talk to farmers, cousin. I was at a wine tasting a couple years ago. I like wine too. And the woman who ran a winery, she's from upstate New York. She was actually saying that they were going to be able to change the type of grapes that they grow because where her vineyard is located, upstate New York, it was getting warmer and they were going to be able to grow different types of grapes. That's nature, cousins. I'm not creating that. I'm not making that up. You talk to the farmers out in the Midwest and stuff, and they'll tell you that the growing seasons are changing because of the climate change. It's getting shorter in some areas, longer in other areas. They're moving quicker, and as the heat is starting to come up, look, here's our little patch of the world. As heat's starting to come up, they're changing what they can grow. So cousins, if the farmers are changing what they can do, if nature's telling us, what are we supposed to be doing about this? I'm your lobbyist. There are other lobbyists who want you to believe that what you're seeing is not true. But come on, cousins. All right? Because what? I care about you. I want you to care about me. And so we all need to take care of this. Now, let me be selfish for a moment. I'm not going to be here. Okay? Like, I'm looking to go to Miami. And even in Miami, they're having daytime flooding. You check it out. They're having daytime flooding in Miami when it rains. Why is that? Because of water melting and the sea levels rising. Period. All right, cousins, that's a wrap for today. Thank you for listening. Subscribe, tell your friends, and recognize that I care about you. I want you to continue caring about me. Wear your mask, and let's save our planet together. Take care.
Welcome to the show. Here we go again. Hey, cousins. Drink up, cousins. I got some news to tell you.